Okay, I'm in a dark room right now because I can't have UV rays coming in and ruining my solution. I have this part A cyanotype and part B cyanotype that I'm going to mix together. And then I'm going to paint it onto my pieces of fabric that I have here. And I have actually a pile. I want to do 5 because I have 5 experiments that I'm going to do on my cotton fabric. So I'm going to start mixing that up. So whenever I mix, I have to make sure they're in equal parts. And I'm going to just mix into this jar right here. I have some measuring spoons that I'm not going to use for anything else. I'm going to shake up part A. And since I have quite a few pieces of fabric, I'm going to do 2 tablespoons. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to overmix. I'm going to shake this up a little bit. So I added the water to this powder that's in these bottles 24 hours ago. According to the directions, you need to wait 24 hours before using. So that is what I'm doing. Okay. I thought I had a paintbrush floating around here. Let's see. Here it is. It's kind of hard to see in the dark. Alright, so now we're going to make sure this is good and mixed. So I'm just stirring it with my paintbrush for a little bit. And now I'm going to paint this onto my pieces of fabric. I am not going to go all the way to the edges on this. These are test experiments, so if I like what I have, I can always cut off the edges or sew the edges to perfect them a little bit better. You can also do this on paper. I'm doing this on fabric. It is cotton. Okay, so you can see the difference. This one doesn't have any of the solution on it, and this one does. So this one I'm going to hang up. I have several hangers, and I'm just going to put it on a hanger, and I'm going to hang it out in my closet that stays dark until it's dry. And then I can start doing my exposure. And I'm going to repeat that process with all these other pieces of fabric. Okay, so my solution has dried on my fabric, and so now I'm going to start conducting some of my experiments. And the first one that I'm going to do is really just going to be the most basic cyanotype, where I'm going to put shapes on my fabric here. Now, the traditional cyanotype uses leaves, so I can place some leaves. I went and gathered some different types of leaves for my experiment and kind of see other objects that I have. I got these butterflies for something else that I was going to do, and they're just like metal butterflies that I can use, so I might do that. I have some embroidery hoop circles. I don't know, I cut out some bubble wrap. I wanted to see if that would do anything. The sun might hit it a little bit differently to create kind of these illusion of bubbles. I also have smaller pieces of glass that have yarn wrapped around them. So be as creative as possible when you start conducting your experiments as far as your objects go. It doesn't necessarily always have to be a leaf or a natural object. But for this first one, I'm just going to start placing some leaves and trying to make an interesting composition. just using the leaves. For my second experiment, I am going to bring in some water and soap. So that's called a wet cyanotype. And the soapy wet water will actually kind of interrupt the cyanotype solution a little bit, and it'll create kind of a different reaction. And it's a little bit unpredictable. So I'm going to do that on the second one. So I'm pretty happy with this composition for my first one. I'm not sure about these circles, but I'm going to move on because again, these are just experiments. They are probably not going to be my Mona Lisa. So we will see what happens. So I'm first, even though this is the wet one, I'm still going to first place my leaves and my objects before I start putting the soapy water on. All right, so once I get my objects kind of placed in a way that I feel like is pleasing to the eye, now I'm going to bring in my soapy water. So it's really the soap suds that is going to be the big impact. Over here, I have a tub of water, and I also have a whisker to help me whisk some more bubbles. If my bubble, like after a while, bubbles kind of go away. So the whisker will help me bring back some of my bubbles back. Okay. And so I'm just really going to lift and place some of those soapy bubbles on top. Okay. So I have placed my bubbles, and I'm not going to do any additives besides the soap and the bubbles for this one. I'm going to clear off my space here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of glass and I'm going to cover my area. I'm hoping my glass will fit. Yes. So that's going to smoosh all those bubbles down and kind of smush all of the stuff down a little bit. Okay. So this is actually ready to go in the sun. Now I could just bring it in the sun. Another thing I could do is I could cover it with a towel in transition here from going through my house and bringing it outside to help protect it before I bring it outside. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so I have two more experiments that I'm going to do here. I am going to, again, start placing all my objects. I think I want to go, maybe try to get some curves going on here. I might have to bend it a little bit. I have a rose, but I don't know if it's going to smush up well. All right, so I'm going to do a wet cyanotype for this one, and I need to bring back my bubbles. They're vanishing. You know what? I didn't add any butterflies. I feel like I consistently have had butterflies in here, so maybe I need to add one. All right, so I think for this one, I'm going to sprinkle some turmeric into my solution and see what happens with that. So this is my turmeric. It's really just it's used for cooking. It's anti-inflammatory. So sprinkle a little bit of that in there. I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to put my glass on top. So I'm going to let that just sit and put the glass on top when I'm done. I think for this last one, I'm going to do like a combination. I might do a little bit of salt and vinegar and see if that does anything, changes anything. So again, I'm being very scientific with my process here because I'm so new to this process. I'm not sure what happens, what it does, what it creates, what kind of interactions happen. So I have to do some experiments and kind of figure out what's going to work and what isn't. Most of my butterflies don't have any holes left. Ooh, that one's a good one. We'll put that one there. All right, bring back my bubbles. Okay, I'm going to spray it a little bit with my vinegar. And then maybe sprinkle in salt. I don't even know if the salt is going to do anything, but that's okay. I don't have to know. All right, so I'm hoping that this whole thing is going to be covered by this piece of glass. I might have to slide them a little bit closer together. I got a little bit here, but I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I think it's all secure. I do kind of want to add, I haven't added any circles yet, so I'm going to add some circles in my composition here. I don't know if that's too many, or maybe I should just have one big circle, something like that. All right, so I'm going to bring this out and expose it. Okay, so I'm outside now, and I'm just going to expose my cyanotypes to the sun. It's kind of a little bit overcast right now, but the sun is coming in and out and in and out, depending on your environment at that time and what the sun is doing and how many clouds are in. You may have to expose longer. So I'm going to just keep this out here, and then I'm going to check back every once in a while. Okay, so I'm going to put this one in the sun. Again, this is on this side it's a wet cyanotype where I sprayed some vinegar in, and then I put plastic wrap on top. And then this is a wet cyanotype where I sprinkled some salt in and then saran wrap. These are my ones I've done previously, and they're being exposed. You can see some of the magic already starting to happen. The solution has definitely turned darker blue. And this one, you can see some variation where that soap has kind of interfered a little bit with the solution. I'm not sure, this is the first time I'm doing this. I'm not sure how long I'm supposed to leave them out here. So we will see. Okay, so I'm out in the sun. Again, I have 3 different boards here, all different times that it came out. This one
looks pretty much done, so I'm going to take that in and rinse it, but I want to show you different levels here. This one isn't nearly as dark, so I feel like it's still being exposed. We will have to see. And then this one I just brought out and is being exposed now. So I'm going to bring the first one in and rinse it off in the kitchen and then in some water and see what it reveals. Okay, so they've been in the sun and now I'm taking and rinsing them off. And I rinse them until they come clean. So I'll do this for a little bit. It takes about 5 minutes. And whenever you first start, you really don't see your image. And then it magically appears. So it's really kind of magical. So we got to make sure that we get all that solution off well and that the water runs clean before we stop doing this. So my cyanotypes have dried and I ironed them to make them nice and flat, and I just wanted to share the end result. So this was just a normal cyanotype. It was dry and I put objects. I did slightly move the leaves here, and you can kind of see a double exposure almost because of that time that it was moved. This one is a wet cyanotype with just bubbles on top. I think this is actually my favorite. This one is my wet cyanotype with a slight vinegar spray. And one thing I noticed about the vinegar is you kind of have these areas where it makes it kind of separate and gives it a little bit of interesting texture. And this one was a wet cyanotype with vinegar and salt, I believe. I wish I would have taken better notes as I was doing this. And these last two actually had the saran wrap on them, which actually created an interesting texture too. And even some of the wrinkles that was in my fabric originally created some interesting lines in the design. So this one I think might have been my vinegar and salt added, and then I did put some circles. You can see the circles slightly. Those were the ones that I put on top of the glass. So there's a slight circle there and a slight circle here. So I think if I wanted those to be stronger, I'd have to have them under the glass. And then my last one here is the wet cyanotype with the turmeric. And what it did, I'm going to rotate it because it's not in the right orientation. There we go. What it did is it ended up making some yellow color discolorment with the blues, which was very interesting. Okay, so that's the end result of my experiments. I kind of feel like I want to continue experimenting more with possibly layering and taking out images or adding more layers over time, or maybe having layers of glass with different objects and see what happens there. And also maybe working with some transparencies and seeing how an image that's printed on a transparency will transfer over to the cyanotype. But so far I feel like I have a lot of success with these experiments, and I think this is my favorite, just the wet cyanotype without any additives other than the soapy bubbles. So I hope that helps. So I think it's about time for you to get started and start your own experiments. I want you to experiment before you create your own project. Very much like scientists, artists have to experiment and kind of figure out the media before they can actually fully use it in their own artwork. So that will be your next step.